My father died, leaving me the business he built his entire life. But my stepmother decided she was smarter than everyone else. She forged documents and took the company for herself. She thought I couldn't do anything about it, until people in suits walked in on her day of triumph and declared her bankrupt. My father was a true entrepreneur at heart. What started as a small garage operation with 2 lifts and a toolbox had grown into Grease Masters, a chain of 37 auto service centers spread across 3 states. Dad built that empire with calloused hands and a mind that never stopped planning the next expansion. I still remember being 8 years old, sitting on a stack of tires, watching him negotiate with suppliers. By 12, I was helping with oil changes on weekends. By 16, I was managing the books for our flagship location. The business was in my blood as much as his. "Mark," he told me on my 25th birthday, "someday all of this will be yours. Not because you're my son, but because you've earned it." That was 3 years before the cancer diagnosis. 3 years before Meredith entered our lives. Dad met her at a charity gala. She was 15 years younger than him, all smiles and sophistication in her designer dress. I noticed how her eyes scanned the room, calculating values, before settling on my father, the most successful man there. Within 6 months, they were married. I tried to be happy for him. After Mom died, he deserved companionship. Or so I thought. In those final months, as the cancer ate away at him, Meredith was always by his side. The devoted wife. The supportive partner. She managed his medications, screened his visitors, even handled some of his correspondence. I was busy keeping the business running, making sure Dad would have something solid to come back to when he recovered. If he recovered. He didn't. The morning of the will reading was crisp and clear, Minnesota autumn at its finest. Dad would have appreciated the irony, such a beautiful day for such an ugly revelation. The family attorney, Mr. Peterson, had known our family for 20 years. His face was grave as he spread the documents across the polished conference table. As per the final wishes of Jonathan Reeves, dated September 15, the entirety of his estate, including all shares and operational control of Grease Masters Automotive Services, is to be transferred to his wife, Meredith Reeves. The words hit me like a physical blow. What the hell? I shot to my feet, my chair skidding backward. That's impossible. Dad always said the business would come to me. We talked about it less than 2 months ago. Meredith dabbed at the corner of her eye with a tissue. Jonathan changed his mind, Mark. He was worried about your impulsiveness. He thought the business needed a steadier hand. Bullshit. I turned to Peterson. This can't be right. Check it again. Peterson adjusted his glasses uncomfortably. I'm sorry, Mark. The documents are quite clear. Your father amended his will shortly before passing. Everything is in order. He wouldn't do this. Not without telling me. Meredith's somber expression cracked just enough for me to catch a glimpse of something beneath, satisfaction. She quickly recovered, reaching across to pat my hand. I pulled away. He was trying to protect you, Mark. Running a business this size is an enormous responsibility. I looked at the signatures. It looked like Dad's handwriting, but something felt off. I couldn't place it exactly, the pressure of the pen, maybe, or the slight angle of the letters. I want the original documents examined, I said. Peterson cleared his throat. I can assure you, these have been properly vetted and notarized. By who? A notary Meredith recommended. Very reputable. Of course. I looked from Peterson to Meredith. Her eyes held mine, challenging me to make a scene. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door. This isn't over, I said. I spent the next week watching helplessly as Meredith moved into the corner office at headquarters. She replaced Dad's beat-up desk, the one he'd started with in that first garage, with some glass monstrosity. She hired a business efficiency consultant who recommended immediate staff reductions. 17 employees, most who'd been with Dad for over a decade, were let go that first month. Then the sell-offs began. Our location in Rochester, gone. The training center Dad had built for underprivileged youth interested in auto repair, closed and the property listed. The 3 new locations we'd been developing, construction halted and the properties flipped for quick cash. She was gutting the company, piece by piece. I tried to rally the remaining staff, but they were terrified of losing their jobs. I approached our long-term investors, but the will had been clear, Meredith had controlling interest. I even tried to get a bank loan to buy her out, but with no collateral and the company's finances suddenly in disarray, no one would touch it. You should move on, Meredith told me over coffee one morning. She'd summoned me to discuss my role in the new organization. I'm thinking of selling the whole operation to Nation Auto. They've made a reasonable offer. Nation Auto, the soulless corporate chain that had been trying to put us out of business for years. Dad had refused to sell to them 3 times. You can't be serious, I said. They'll strip everything and fire everyone. She shrugged. Business is business. Jonathan was too sentimental. That night, as I sat in my apartment surrounded by photo albums and old business plans Dad and I had drawn up, something clicked. Dad had been meticulous about documentation. Every plan, every expansion, every strategic decision, it was all recorded. I started digging through storage boxes. Financial records. Meeting minutes. Correspondence. There had to be something. It took 3 days, but I found it, a letter dated just 2 weeks before Dad died. It outlined his succession plan for the company, with me taking over as CEO and a trust established to ensure Meredith was comfortable for life. It wasn't a legal document, but it clearly showed his intentions. Armed with this, I contacted Stan Goldberg, Dad's original attorney who had retired 2 years earlier. Stan was skeptical at first, but agreed to meet. The signature doesn't look right, he said, examining the copy of the will I'd brought. Jonathan's R always had this distinctive loop. This is close, but not quite. He looked up. But proving forgery is difficult, especially with a notarized document. What about this? I showed him Dad's letter. It helps establish intent, but it's not legally binding. He thought for a moment. We need more. We need to establish a pattern of manipulation and deceit. That became my mission. I took a leave of absence from the company, not that Meredith objected, and began investigating. I spoke with nurses who had cared for Dad in his final weeks. One remembered Meredith insisting on controlling his medications personally. Another recalled how she limited visitors, claiming Dad needed rest. I tracked down the notary who had witnessed the new will. After some persuasion, she admitted she never actually saw my father sign the document. Meredith had brought it in already signed, claiming Dad was too ill to come himself, a clear violation of notary protocol. But the most damning evidence came from Dad's personal assistant, Lydia. She had been let go the day after Meredith took over. Your father asked me to mail that letter to you, she said, pointing to the succession plan document. But Meredith intercepted it. When I mentioned it to her, she said she'd handle it personally. Lydia hesitated. There's something else. The night before your father supposedly changed his will, Meredith was practicing his signature. I saw her at his desk with several sheets of paper. It was enough to build a case, but not enough to guarantee a win in court. Meredith had resources now, and the legal battle could drag on for years while she continued dismantling the company. I needed to be smarter. More strategic. Like Dad would have been. I remembered something he once told me, in business, Mark, your network is your net worth. So I started networking. First, I approached Walter Davidson, owner of AutoPro Incorporated, one of our main competitors. Dad and Walter had a respectful rivalry for decades. John was a tough competitor, but a fair one, Walter said when I met him for lunch. What Meredith's doing to his legacy is a disgrace. I laid out what I knew about Meredith's financial maneuvers, the sell-offs, the account drainings, the tax shortcuts she was taking. She's running the company into the ground, I explained. Soon there won't be anything left to save. Walter leaned forward. What exactly are you proposing? A coordinated buy. When she triggers the company's collapse, and she will, we move in together and acquire the assets at bankruptcy prices. You get the physical locations you've always wanted, I get operational control to rebuild my father's legacy. He considered this. And what do you bring to this partnership besides inside information? Loyalty, I said. The employees who are left still believe in Dad's vision. They'll stay with me if I'm back in charge. And I know where all the bodies are buried, metaphorically speaking. I know which locations are underperforming, which managers are worth keeping, and which suppliers give the best terms. Walter nodded slowly. I'll think about it. But you need more leverage. He was right. I needed pressure points. My next move was to contact the banks holding Greasemaster's business loans. I couldn't say anything directly defamatory, but I could ask pointed questions about the company's financial health that would trigger internal reviews. Then I approached Nation Auto, the corporate giant Meredith was negotiating with. I shared concerns about potential liabilities and regulatory issues that might come with the acquisition, all truthful, but details Meredith would likely try to minimize during negotiations. My most strategic move, however, was reaching out to the state tax authority. During my years managing the books, I'd noticed Meredith had been claiming personal expenses as business deductions. With her in control and no oversight, those improprieties had likely multiplied. An anonymous tip was all it took to trigger an audit. Meanwhile, Meredith was throwing a celebratory dinner at the Grand Hotel downtown. The Nation Auto deal was almost complete. She'd invited executives, local business leaders, and a few remaining managers from Greasemaster's. She didn't invite me, but Walter Davidson did, as his guest. I dressed in my best suit and arrived early, positioning myself at the bar where I could observe without being immediately noticed. Meredith was radiant, working the room in a red designer dress, champagne glass in hand. The perfect picture of success. Until her phone rang. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I watched the color drain from her face. She excused herself and stepped outside. When she returned 5 minutes later, her composure had slipped. She pulled the Nation Auto CEO aside for an urgent conversation. The timing was perfect. At 7:45 p.m., 3 groups entered the ballroom almost simultaneously. First came the tax investigators, who made a beeline for Meredith. Next were representatives from Midwest United Bank, Greasemaster's primary lender, carrying paperwork that I knew contained a declaration of default on the company's loans. Finally, my attorney entered with a court order freezing all asset transfers pending investigation of fraud allegations. Meredith's face went from pale to ashen. There must be some mistake, she stammered to the tax investigator. No mistake, Mrs. Reeves, he replied. We have documentation of substantial tax irregularities. The bank representative stepped forward. Additionally, due to misrepresentation of the company's financial status, we're calling in all outstanding loans, effective immediately. The Nation Auto CEO was already backing away, making a swift exit from what was clearly becoming a legal disaster. That's when Meredith saw me, standing against the wall. Our eyes met across the room. In that moment, understanding dawned on her face. You, she whispered, but I could read her lips from across the room. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply nodded once, raised my glass in a silent toast, and walked out. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Meredith faced criminal charges for tax evasion and fraud. The forged will was invalidated. The company entered receivership, its assets frozen pending resolution of the various legal claims. 6 months later, Walter Davidson and I submitted the winning bid to acquire Greasemaster's assets from bankruptcy. As agreed, he took the real estate, and I took operational control. We rehired most of the staff who had been let go, including Lydia and the 17 employees from the first round of cuts. The last I heard, Meredith was awaiting trial, having lost everything: the house, the luxury cars, the designer clothes, all seized to cover tax penalties and legal fees. As for me, I renamed the company Reeves Automotive, in honor of Dad. The first thing I did was restore that beat-up desk to the corner office. Some days, when I'm working late, I swear I can feel him there, nodding in approval. But sometimes, in quiet moments, I wonder if he would approve of how I handled everything. The calculated moves. The strategic patience. The final, devastating checkmate. Dad was tough but fair. Was I? Then again, he always said business wasn't for the faint of heart. Sometimes, Mark, he told me once, you have to choose between being nice and being respected. I chose respect. And I sleep just fine at night. Usually. It's been a year since I reclaimed what was rightfully mine. The company is thriving again. We've expanded to 5 new locations, reinstated the youth training program, and customer loyalty is at an all-time high. On paper, it's a complete success story. But success has its price. There are nights I lie awake thinking about the look on Meredith's face when her world collapsed. Not with satisfaction, but with a strange emptiness. I'd spent months consumed by the need for justice, for revenge. Now that I had it, the victory felt incomplete. Last week, I visited Dad's grave for the first time since the takeover. Standing there among the fallen autumn leaves, I found myself talking to him as if he could hear me. Did I do the right thing? Or did I become something else in the process? The cemetery remained silent, but as I turned to leave, I spotted a familiar figure in the distance: Meredith. She'd been released pending trial, ankle monitor visible beneath her now modest pants. Our eyes met briefly before she turned and walked away. That night, I pulled out the last letter Dad had written to her, the one the police had found in their investigation. In it, he expressed genuine love, even as his body failed him. He believed in her. He trusted her. His only flaw was seeing the best in people, even those who didn't deserve it. Sometimes I wonder if that flaw lives in me too. Because despite everything, part of me wants to understand why she did it. What emptiness was she trying to fill by stealing someone else's legacy? The company attorney thinks I'm crazy, but I've instructed him to offer Meredith a deal, testify against the notary who helped forge the documents, provide a full confession, and in return, I won't pursue additional civil charges. She'll still face the tax evasion charges, but with a plea bargain, she might avoid the maximum sentence. Is it mercy or just business? I'm not sure anymore. Dad always said the hardest decisions are the ones where your heart and your head pull you in different directions. Tomorrow, I'll meet with Walter to discuss buying back his portion of the company. He's been a good partner, but Greasemasters, no, Reeves Automotive, belongs in the family. It's what Dad would have wanted. When I sit at his old desk, running my fingers over the scratches and coffee stains that tell the story of his life's work, I sometimes feel like I'm sitting in 2 worlds, the one he built and the one I saved through methods he might not have used. The revenge is complete. Justice has been served. But the story isn't over, not really. Because now comes the hardest part, building something that honors his legacy while being true to who I am. And who am I? The son who protected his father's dream? The businessman who orchestrated a competitor's downfall? The person who lies awake wondering if the victory was worth the cost? Maybe I'm all of those things. Maybe that's what it means to inherit more than just a business, to inherit the complicated, messy reality of being human in a world that rarely offers simple choices. Dad's voice seems to echo in my mind, the measure of success isn't in what you build, Mark. It's in why you build it, and who you become along the way. I'm still figuring that part out.